Welcome to Nourishing Maine. I'm Mary Kate Rennie.
And I'm Marge Kilkelly, and we're here at Dragonfly Cove Farm. And I am delighted to introduce John Piatti, who is the president of the American Farmland Trust and a good Mainer and been involved in a lot of Maine agriculture projects and things for many years. And we're delighted. And we are particularly pleased because one of the themes for Farmland Trust is no farms, no food, and really, that's what we're about.
Simple enough.
Indeed.
So farm meets food, and
Exactly.
here we are.
All comes together.
And you have brought us a very special recipe today.
Well, I'm not sure it's special. It's fun. It's good. It really showcases local ingredients, and it's easy. So, and it tastes good. So I guess it meets all the criteria.
It does. It does. And we like the flexible part,
Yeah.
Especially in the dead of winter.
Yeah. Yeah, you can make this with sort of any, I mean, we have here the items that are in the official recipe, but you can throw carrots in it, you can throw potatoes in it, you can, whatever's around, it works.
See, you fit into our mold perfectly.
Again,
It's like, that's right. We have all the measuring things, and we have all the recipes, and they're guidance.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
just guidance. Well, let's start chopping.
All right.
We have onions to chop.
Yeah, we have a couple onions and some garlic and cut up some greens. We can use any of these greens, it doesn't really matter.
So what have we got here?
we've got chard, spinach, and kale.
Yeah.
And you were saying collard greens would work as well?
Collard greens would work, yep, and anything. It really doesn't matter. My wife Susan really loves Tuscan kale, so she usually makes it with kale.
Is that the dinosaur kale?
I don't know.
Is that it? So I think
It has that real.
Yeah,
okay.
it's got
You
this
call
like
that dinosaur?
I think I've heard that.
Oh, okay.
It's got a completely different texture, and it's smoother but bumpy, and it's easier easier to stem.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, or de-stem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I was going to say one of the other things that you brought with you, usually we provide everything, but you said, no, I have turkey stock.
I have turkey stock because we did this really rare thing in late November, and we cooked a turkey. I make a lot of stock. Stock is my thing because I love boiling down bones. It's fun. But we eat a lot of roast chicken during the course of the year. It's relatively inexpensive. It tastes great. It's easy to cook. And then you're left with these bones and you can make chicken stock. But we did the same thing with our turkey. Our turkey this year. So this might be a little diluted, actually, because I think we made 5 quarts of stock that was so big that I put in a lot of water to cover it. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
Lots of things we can add to it, and it's all going to be wonderful.
Exactly.
Yeah, the flavor bomb in this is going to be great.
All right, so
I'll get started with
Onions, garlic,
Garlic.
and greens. And I can do another onion with you.
Yeah, we're going to need 2 cups at least, right?
Yeah, I think the recipe says 1 large onion, but you know you can put in whatever you want, right?
I'm looking at the recipe. It says 2 large onions.
Oh, it says 2
Yes.
large. All right, so put in 3
You can't
if
go
you
wrong,
want.
right?
Doesn't go
Well,
wrong.
since Marge is here, we're going big with the onions.
yeah, that's one of our jokes. is
Okay.
that
Oh,
I
really?
love
All right.
onions.
All right. So, how do you want to cut them? I mean, it doesn't matter. They just have to be sort of
Have at
consistent,
it.
right?
I'm going dice.
Dice. Okay. Or how big your dice is.
There you go. So it's fun doing the
I'll follow
garlic
your lead.
because I
All
love
right.
smushing the garlic. So taking a wide knife.
Yeah.
Look at that. Any frustrations you have? I mean, it's just gone.
Do you throw in the skin or do you peel them?
No, I peel the skin off.
Okay.
But I wait until I'm done.
Yeah, when you're all done.
And again, there's... The other thing that's interesting about garlic, if you slice garlic, you have less space, less surface area, and you don't get all the flavor out of it. So if you smush it, it releases more of the flavor. So, and garlic is such a wonderful thing.
I use one of the little crushers.
Yep.
And then just
Yep,
skim it
that'll do
off the garlic press. But that does work.
Okay, it's already smelling good, guys.
Should I get some oil warming
Yep,
up over
let's
here?
do
Does that
that.
make sense? So, it's just the way you start, at least in our household, you start almost every dinner. You throw oil in a pot, little olive oil and warm it up, and then we'll throw the onions in. I like to put the garlic in a little later because it tends to brown faster than the onion. So
And it does change the flavor of the garlic. You can burn it, I think, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. So
Burnt garlic isn't good.
But a browned onion doesn't hurt a thing.
no, not at all. Not at all.
So, and do you put your oregano and your other stronger spices in early?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
Let me
we'll
get one
do-
little more piece.
Yeah.
One small
You can
piece.
use that to transport if you'd like, or use
look
the
at
other
that. It's
thing.
very
This is
fancy.
it is fancy.
Yeah.
Practical. We're into practical.
We are. One more little.
All right.
There you go, John.
So we'll get the onions going. Those get a little translucent.
And there's a spoon right on the back there.
Oh, yeah.
A spurtle. I love that word.
Do you know where it comes from?
I have no idea. Just that's what they're called.
Is it the shape of the spoon? It's like
I think it's because it's supposed to be like a
spoon and a
spoon and a paddle and a, all
it just
that
came to
stuff.
me. I'm-
Yeah.
Want to add the
cooking up?
stock up
Not
afterwards?
yet. Yeah, we'll put this stuff in, and then I'll throw in a little oregano and some salt and a little red crushed pepper,
Yeah.
and just let those sort of flavors come together for a minute,
got
and then we'll add the stock. We need to cut the greens though, so
Yep.
whatever you want,
I can
or
do
some combination thereof.
I'm going with kale.
All right.
I'll do a little bit of chard.
Okay.
I've always just loved this. I mean, even
It's
as
gorgeous,
an ornamental.
isn't it? I know,
It
I
is.
know. It's beautiful. And to make my life easier, I'm just going to throw these in with the garlic.
there you go.
Yeah, why not, right? I have no idea how much of this is supposed to use, but it doesn't really matter.
That's the spirit of Nourishing Maine.
See again, they're here.
Let's see, this is just regular salt.
Himalayan pink salt.
Oh, well, the goats love it? Is
The
that what you
goats
said?
like Himalayan pink salt too. They have salt blocks out there that are Himalayan pink salt.
So, John, are you going to add the kale and the greens right along with your onions? Not yet.
I'm going to throw this stuff in,
Uh-huh.
and then when this is sort of, done its magic for a while, I'm going to let the onions cook a little bit more. Then we'll throw the stock and the greens in at the
Got
same,
it.
and the beans. Now the
right.
beans, what you have done, Marge, is you have pre-cooked the beans, right?
I did.
You can use canned beans for this, but you can get great dry beans in Maine, as you have procured here. And then to save time, you cooked them earlier. But it's cooking beans it's not rocket science, right? You just soak them. Ideally, soak them overnight. Then you change the water and you cook them for maybe a half hour. Or I think you used a pressure cooker. So you're
It's
doing the
Instant Pot magic.
yeah.
Yeah.
And if you haven't used canned beans and you want to use your own and do it from scratch, it will take a little bit of time. The Instant Pot really shrinks that up, but you should give yourself a few hours to cook beans. And the other wonderful thing about the beans and the onions and even the feta that we'll be putting in later is that it was all grown or produced in Maine. So that's another great attribute to this soup. And when you're cutting greens, they should be washed before you start cutting them.
We've done that. Yeah.
And these are fine enough that you don't have to worry about the stem too much. But when you get down toward the end, you want to destem them and make sure that you don't want to put that in the soup. So I just wanted to mention that part. But chard, some people like the stems, some people don't. They're beautiful, and they definitely soften more than any kale stem.
They are beautiful.
And spinach, you can throw in the whole caboodle.
Actually, one of the things I do with Swiss chard, I let some of it really grow extra large, and then use the stems in a stir fry, and it is so good.
So I'm going to grab stock now.
All right.
Throw that in. I have no idea what it's going to taste like, but we'll find out.
Well, you'll have to try it. So
So we're doing about 2 cups of kale, and that's a lot of greens, but probably they reduce for sure. They reduce right away.
they totally
When they hit the
reduce.
heat, they reduce.
That's like buying a big bag of spinach. You buy a big bag of spinach and you cook it, and you go like, where did it go?
And these are the cooked beans that look beautiful.
Those are
And
northern beans.
So would we be draining this jar of
No.
the water.
There's not that much. Do you want to drain it?
No,
Just
no.
But some people do drain canned beans.
Yeah.
But it is a choice. Sometimes people drain it because of the salt content in the canned beans. But because these were done here, you know how much salt is in it.
I didn't add any salt.
Okay.
And my stock is relatively, I won't say it's salt-free, but isn't it much? So we're going to have to add more salt to that. We're ready. I mean, this thing is basically
gonna
just
put it
needs to
together?
cook at this point. We just have to throw everything in the pot. We've got the stock. I'm adding the beans. We can throw the greens in, and then we let it cook. And then at the end of the cooking, we put some other stuff in it to make it taste even better.
All right. So if we put the greens in, then we can work on lemon. We need to zest the lemon. Isn't that beautiful?
Really, yeah.
And that is just gonna cook. I may not have brought quite as much stock for your very ambitious greens cutting, but that's okay.
Well,
I mean, you can always throw a little white wine or a little water, or not worry about it and have a big, thick,
more of a stew.
thick-
I'm going to add a little bit of water. How about
yeah,
that?
yeah, that's good. And I'm going to put just a little salt in, and then we'll just let that cook.
Okay. You want to do it that way?
Yeah, thanks. I'm taking this from the goats, right? I mean, I feel bad.
Actually, what's funny, we have these salt blocks that hang, and it's real entertainment for the goats because they get to pop them around and play with them and whatever. And then we started buying Himalayan salt for us, and it was like, oh, well, we got the advice from the goats because they really like it. So
Yeah,
what are some of the things that you've been working on?
Well, I've been working on the
You've
soup.
been working on soup. He's gonna.
So American Farmland Trust, as you know, is really it was the first national organization that really looked at agriculture and environmental issues as two sides of the same coin. And we've been the force behind a lot of the farmland protection work that's happened in the country, making sure land is going to stay in farming. We do an awful lot with better farming practices. We were instrumental in getting the conservation title included into the Farm Bill in 1985, and most of the good part, you and I know very much, there's a lot of things in federal policy we'd like to change, but there's also some really good stuff in federal policy, and a lot of that resides in the conservation title and their kosher programs to help farmers do the right thing by their land. And AFT has had a really major role in developing that policy, and as you also know, policy isn't stagnant. Once you do something, then there's rulemaking, then there's modifications, then there are new ideas that need to be brought in. So AFT's been around now for 40 some odd years, but the conservation title in the Farm Bill is from 85, so 38 years.
I remember it well.
38 years of constant refining and working on that stuff. But the real big news of the last year and a half with agricultural policy has been that there's been a sea change. And two major things happened. One is through the Inflation Reduction Act, we had $20 billion provided for Farm Bill programs, conservation programs, for the purpose of being a solution to our climate crisis, part of the solution. That is a sea change. Congress, even 5 years ago, they supported these programs, but they never saw the direct link between better farming practices and a climate solution. That is a change. The other way it's a change is just the magnitude of the funds. So I talked about the conservation title, and in 38 years, there's been about $110 billion provided for these good programs to help farmers do what's right on land. Not insignificant amount of money, but in one fell swoop, $20 billion on top of that. It's almost 20% of what's been provided over a 38-year period. So it's an effort to really scale up things that we know have worked. That's one big change. There's another.
Okay.
I view that as these are tried and true programs that work, and we're now bringing them up to scale to do even better outcomes, right? But on the second track, the administration has put into place a series of very innovative projects called Climate Smart Commodity Partnership Projects, which are really between industry and nonprofits and producers. And if you view the $20 billion as sort of a investment in bringing things to scale that we know work, this other pool, which is close to $4 billion, is really the R&D side of things. It's experimenting, it's figuring out what the next step are. And together, that is significant.
I was going to say, it sounds like a light bulb has certainly gone off. And dots have been connected.
Yes.
And you've been right there to do that, or to help get that
a lot of people have been involved, but my organization, I mean, I can brag because I wasn't there when we sort of laid the foundation for this work years and years ago. But they really play an outsized role.
And it takes time for that to happen.
Yeah. And I think the other thing about the Farm Bill, I mean, obviously, for every part of the country, for every individual farmer, there are things in the Farm Bill that work for them and things that don't work for them. And what we need is compromise.
Yes.
And so we need to support things that, you know, as a tiny farm, we need to support things that work for larger farms. And larger farms, we hope, will support things that work for us. And that's what makes it happen.
You're absolutely right.
And that's been, you know, I think a real frustration sometimes for me working in policy is it's like, well, I don't like this piece. Well, somebody else does. And somebody else's livelihood depends on it.
And agriculture is a system. And
it is.
And we need it. We need it all. And, you know, you and I have been working in this space for decades. You know, if there's one major change between now and, say, 30 years ago, is that the public are more engaged. They care about where their food comes from. That's all great. But sometimes it's because, you know, they've seen one movie or read one book and think they have the answers. And it leads to, well, these are good farms and those are bad farms. And what you're getting at really speaks to what's needed. We need to look at it as a system. We need big farms. We need small farms. We need a whole variety of farms, and we can't afford to villainize farmers. Every farmer I know tries to do what's right by the land. They try to be good stewards, and frequently they are, and when they aren't, it's usually because of forces they cannot control.
Absolutely. And the thing that is so critical, I mean, the products that we sell on our farm are different than the products that you might get in the supermarket from a much bigger farm, but maybe that's what you can afford. And go for it. You know, I mean, it's just, it's not a, you know, you're right, it's a system, and it's a system that's interdependent. Absolutely interdependent. And I think that's been a lot of my message over the years is that, you know, if you get rid of one segment of agriculture, part of what you're going to do is impact all of agriculture.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And Maine is such a perfect microcosm to what you're both talking about, in that we've got small farms. I mean, you'd consider yourself a small farmer.
Tiny.
And then we had, you know, Tim Hobbs speak to us about a huge industry in Maine, the potato industry. And then there's, you know, those farms in between. And so, you know, you're speaking to the farmers in Maine, and that there are solutions, but that we really have to keep an eye on what's in front of each scalable model, I guess.
Exactly. I think we should have a lot of pride in what's happened with Maine agriculture in the last 30 years. You know, we were really a force behind the local ag movement. There have been a lot of small farms that are thriving. We've never been a huge commodity producer, but we have some important elements of it, be it potatoes or dairy or even wild blueberries, one-time brown eggs. But the piece that I think often does not fit as well is these farms in the middle. They're caught between, and that's another area where I think the administration has made some strides. I mean, the pandemic opened people's eyes to not seeing product on their grocery shelves, but the administration has put a lot of money into sort of infrastructure to support more medium-sized farm operations with processing plants and the like.
Processing for meat, we need it. We need it.
In Maine, are those medium-sized farmers mostly produce, or are they livestock, or both? There's not a balance. There's a balance of both.
It's a tough place to be, though. It's a tough place to be. And I know on the Board of Agriculture, one of the things that we've talked about is just you know, engineering. Ag engineering is critically important. So let's talk lemon for a minute.
Lemon.
So as the soup is cooking down, I've zested a lemon, and I've used my just delightful little microplane to get just the very edge, just the lemony flavor off of there. And then it also calls for juice from half a lemon.
So there we go.
So I'm going to put those two things together.
And that's going to be added at the end before we serve it with some feta.
And some parsley.
And I'll do my parsley spiel, which is I love parsley. People think of parsley as a little decoration.
Yep.
But parsley has incredible flavor and is really good as something in of itself. And the person who taught me that was Jim Hanna. Do you know Jim Hanna?
Oh, yeah.
Jim Hanna's done great work for 30 years, mostly on food security issues. His family is from Lebanon, and you think of tabbouleh.
Oh, tabbouleh.
And you go to the supermarket and you buy the Near East package of tabbouleh, and they have a couple little specks of parsley. If you get real tabbouleh, it is parsley. It is parsley.
If you make it,
exactly.
That's bulgur
exactly.
and parsley.
And so Jim, I credit with telling me, no, go heavy on the parsley. And for 25 years, that's what I've been doing, and I love it. I think it's, and I grabbed parsley from our house yesterday. I got some a week ago when we still had some snow on the ground. You just move aside the snow, and you can it doesn't work in the middle of January, but up to this time of year you can still
push it.
You can still harvest parsley.
I've still got some out in the greenhouse.
Yeah.
But not quite enough for today. Yeah. And there's also different kinds of parsley. Yeah. And actually the curly parsley probably has a little less flavor than the flat leaf parsley.
Yeah.
But it is all delicious.
It is.
But we want to chop it up.
Yeah. So what we do for some recipes, you really don't want to have the stems.
Yep.
This one, it's fine. It's like it's cooking with greens in there, right? And I'll probably throw it in a little earlier, just so it gets a little cooking too. But we throw on recipes when we don't want stems, we throw our stems in our salads. So it's just like having a little celery or a little crunch in your salad.
Celery.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing you can do is take the stems and like the tops of celery and onions and that sort of thing and put them in a bag, stick them in the freezer, and when you're making your turkey stock,
throw them in.
Throw them in.
Absolutely.
So now it's time to add the feta.
Excellent.
Maine-made feta.
Maine-made feta. There's a lot of great cheeses that are being made in Maine. I think it's one of the success stories of Maine agriculture. It's really come a long, long way. And this was from a place up in Newport, but Seal Cove in Lemoyne makes a real good feta. There's a lot of them. I read somewhere that Maine per capita has more cheesemakers than any other state in the country.
Oh my God, that's fascinating.
Yeah, pretty cool. Of course, we don't have a lot of people, so those.
Well, but we do have a lot of cheesemakers.
We have a lot of cheesemakers.
Yes,
we have
we
a lot
do.
of cheesemakers.
All right.
So we're going to crumble that up.
Yeah, crumble that up.
All right.
Let's do it. All right, so it's crumbling.
Crumble, crumble.
Well, I'm going to crumble here.
Such good stuff. I love feta.
Actually, and I am going to throw this in just so it has a minute or two
That's the parsley.
to cook. That's the parsley. Remember, don't skimp on the parsley.
Don't skimp on the parsley.
Good stuff. Think of Jim Hanna. And
Marge says, don't skip on the onions.
That's right.
Now we know John says, don't skimp on the parsley.
We're going to have all these truisms, Nourishing Maine truisms.
I think we can throw the
Lemon.
lemon zest and lemon juice in as well at this point. I think we'll just put the cheese in just before we serve it, and we'll be all set.
All right.
Very simple recipe, and as we pointed out, only the lemon and the olive oil, the only things that you can't get locally, which is really nice and available pretty much any time of year. You can get this stuff in the dead of winter.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we are. And and I think the other piece is, I mean, soup is just so comforting. And on a really cold day, and I know we'll have the wood stove going some days and just have soup going on the back of it, and it's just wonderful.
The last ingredient.
The last ingredient, the feta. I'm going to put that in the soup, stir it up, and we'll be good to go.
That's the finishing touches, so it's time to ladle the soup for a taste. Of these winter vegetables.
And there's some biscuits over on the other side.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Ooh.
And the biscuits are compliment of Joe Murray.
Yes, those are Joe's Blue
The
Ribbon
Joe's
biscuits.
Way biscuit. Oh, that looks terrific.
It might be too hot to eat, though.
Well, how about we scoop it and let it cool off a little bit?
Yeah.
And then we can.
That looks wonderful.
The combination of the lemon juice and the feta, the tartness, and then the bitterness of the kale.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really wonderful.
That might be my favorite
that's
flavor
the key.
profile.
No, if you didn't have the lemon juice and the feta,
right?
It would not be this soup. No.
Yeah.
And you can put a little olive oil on top if you want.
right.
That's
that
a
makes sense.
matter of choice.
Right.
And, don't skimp on good olive oil either. It makes all the difference.
Yeah, that's for sure.
There's some wonderful flavored olive oils now. We have, we've tried some, and also balsamic vinegar.
It looks so nice.
We'll let this cool off a little bit. Terrific.
And there's lunch or dinner.
And almost all of it is from scratch.
It's very satisfying to really start from scratch and have fresh vegetables and the dried beans and all the other things. But it takes some extra steps because if you buy those things processed, somebody's done all those steps for you.
It's true.
And I bet Joe has some ideas on how we need to do some of that preparation.
I bet you're right.
Welcome to the Joe Way. Today we're going to be talking about cleaning your winter vegetables when you get them from either the store or your farmer's market or your local farm. These products are not processed totally and they all come with a basic warning. This particular bag has a warning on it, and what that does is it says you should clean them before you use them. And if you don't clean them and use them, you may have the nice future plans of visiting a dentist, because if there's a little rock in it, you will break your tooth. So it's incentive to go through them, find out, and make sure they are clean. When you wash them, you can soak them overnight for the beans, or you can just wash them off and cook them. Leeks are another one. Leeks are like an onion, but tall and skinny, and the leaves grow up on the outside of it. And when any vegetable that has the leaves coming up out on the outside, there's a chance of dirt or pebble or something getting stuck in between the leaves. So on a leek, you cut it lengthwise, about 2 inches up from the root. Beets are another one that they will hold dirt in the top flower section, a leaf section. You want to cut those off, the beet greens off, use them, and then rinse off the beet before you peel it or eat it. Kale's another one that you should rinse off before you use it, because that's in direct contact with the ground or the outside air. And that's the Joe Way. See you next time.
Thanks, Joe.
Well, and thanks for the biscuits as well. So now we've got this wonderful lunch of a soup that is pretty much, as you say, all but the lemon comes from Maine. And so we started with your turkey broth.
Yep. Left over from Thanksgiving, turkey
Homemade.
made into broth.
Yum.
And onions and garlic.
And then the greens, whichever one you choose to use, all from Maine, and as much as you want. There's a lot of greens in this batch, which is my preference. And then the feta.
Feta and
Lemon.
And don't forget the parsley.
Oh,
Don't forget the parsley.
and we almost did. And that drizzle of olive oil as a finish would be delicious, as you mentioned. Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
It would.
Well, thanks for bringing the recipe.
Well, you're very welcome. Very simple, but very good.
Oh, perfect. And thanks for being here. And
Oh, it's
while
a
we
pleasure.
absolutely love your apron, and we're glad you wore it today, we also want to make sure
Excellent.
that you go
I will
home with
add
a-
it to my collection.
Yes.
I'm honored. Oh, thank you so much.
We're honored for you to be here, and I think the conversation around what's going on with farms is really important, because in so many cases I think farms look different than they looked as people were growing up, and they don't understand what's going on. So we really appreciate the work that you and your organization do.
And programs like this help elevate the understanding as well. And of course, you've been at this for, I'd be careful, I gotta be careful, but a long time, and have done amazing work. Much appreciated.
Thank you. And you too. Thanks, John, for joining us today. This has been really informative and delicious and all around nourishing. See you next time on Nourishing Maine.